All right. Okay, so as usual, my disclaimer before we get started, I have to kind of briefly review, but we, when we do these presentations for all different organizations and for different needs, we do like to reinforce that this isn't intended as any type of formal therapy or diagnostic treatment for what we're going to discuss. And certainly if you have any symptoms related to the content, or any other conditions that might be related, please don't hesitate to consult your medical professional just to seek guidance in what you need. There we go. Okay, so last month we touched a little bit in July on just general organizational strategies. So I ran some ideas past Jen of what we might be able to do this month. And one of the things that we haven't talked about specifically is time management. So the purpose of today's presentation is going to focus strictly on time management. And while, whether that be you're working at home, taking care of your children or your family or going to school, time management is something that can be affected across any type of cognitive demands that we might have, functional demands and things that we need to manage in day-to-day life. So, with what we're going to talk about today, I will encourage you a lot of times to think about how this applies to your life and how you can actually adapt and change what we'll talk about. So I wanted to start out with a quote from a book that I have. It states, besides the noble art of getting things done, there is a noble art of leaving things undone. The wisdom in life consists in the elimination of non-essentials. And I really like this quote because I think sometimes, and especially, if we have a lot going on, we get caught up in the little non-essential things in life. And that really kind of takes us away from the things that are the most important and the things that really do enable us to be more productive and get things done. So keep this in mind. I had a patient one time that said they found a book that they loved that was called like The Art of Saying No or something along those lines. And the idea is just that we have to kind of focus on what's important. And if something's not important, we can say no and limit putting too much on our plate. So the goals of today's presentation, 4 main areas, very similar to things that I set forth the last time as well. But the first one is to increase in awareness that improved time management can actually help us to compensate for different impairments in memory, our attention, and our high-level cognitive skills, which is our executive functioning. That's our high-level prioritizing, thought organization, reasoning. I don't know if I mentioned this, prioritizing. And those kinds of things are very important. And sometimes just by improving our time management, this can help us in these other areas. When we have more trouble with attention, memory, executive functioning, that in turn can also affect how well we're managing our time. Another goal I would like for you to be able to do is to obtain some different strategies that can help with time management. And like I said, kind of going on to the next goal is to self-reflect on your own time management and how we can better implement strategies in a very individualistic way. What works for myself might not work for you, and that's okay. If we kind of take the core of these techniques and these strategies, they're free to interpretation and just implementing in a way that's going to be more effective for you. And the last goal is to take what you've learned today and discuss with your family to help further develop strategies and tools. Something that we talked about a little bit more last time was having family on board with organization. And that's the same thing with time management. Sometimes taking a little bit off of our plate or having family on board to help with managing time can be one of the most effective tools. So that's one thing that I also, for number 4, would like to have a goal met for today. So the foundation of our presentation today comes from an article I found called 5 Essential Time Management Techniques. And I really liked this website. It's technically a blog, but they had really good suggestions in a way to format how we manage our time. And we will go into each one of these individually as well, to be a little bit more specific. So the 5 B's, as we have it for time management, are to be intentional, to be prioritized, be focused, structured, and to also be self-aware. So our first subtopic that we'll talk about today is being intentional. So to be intentional means that we have to identify and establish what our goals are. Again, I'm going to sound like a robot, but this is very individualized. So your goal might be a productivity measure that you have for a time of day. For example, I want to get these things done in the morning, setting goals for that morning. But that can be setting goals for the day, the week, the month, short-term goals, long-term goals, and also developing timelines to achieve these goals. I can't recall if I talk about this at another part, but also making sure that our goals are, it's on this slide, making sure our goals are realistic. So, when we're developing these short and long-term goals, they can be very helpful, but we also have to be realistic with ourselves. And if we're going through a time period of maybe if you're actively undergoing treatment, or even personally just having a lot of things going on in life otherwise, be realistic about what we want to achieve and really put those high priority things and make those goals at that time, those intentional goals, only the high priority ones. Another strategy for helping manage this is to develop and implement lists. So not only does this help with recalling tasks, but it can help us to redirect when we're distracted or off task. It helps us to actually visualize what we want to achieve to make it more manageable. I know for myself, this is something that's pretty important. I don't know if anybody else sometimes just feels overwhelmed with everything that you have going on. And I will encourage my own patients, and I try to do this myself, to write the list, write down what needs to be done. And just doing that can make it appear more achievable and can actually help you manage what's going on. Sometimes when we don't have intention and we have all of these thoughts, things that we need to do, things we need to accomplish running around in our minds, it kind of can be a little bit anxiety provoking and can be difficult to manage. So when we write them down, we make these intentional goals, it can seem a lot more achievable and manageable. And one last point to discuss as far as being intentional is to plan for energy use depending on how you're feeling. I think this is something that's going to be important, where we all have good days and bad days. And especially, within the participants here, we might have our days that maybe after treatment, we're not feeling as good, or waiting for a treatment, maybe we're not feeling good, but right after we get it, we might feel better. There's all different variations. So with this intention, plan for your energy use and how you might feel, because that can kind of be a guiding factor in what type of goals you established for your time period. The next task, the next part would be ranking our tasks that we need to be completed. So be prioritized. There are different types of prioritization though. And again, this is individualized and it might depend on different things. So one thing, and I think this is the thing that maybe we think about the most when we talk about prioritizing, but organizing and planning things by importance. So general tasks of importance and when they need to be done, what time they need to be done, how important are they, what are the needs. So general importance is one way that we can be prioritized and prioritize our time. We can also prioritize by time constraints and the goals that we need to achieve. So to prevent us from missing our short or our long-term goals, we can prioritize tasks depending on when these different goals need to be met. So thinking about when versus just general importance. So if there is something that needs to be done by the end of the week, that might be something that's going to take priority based on time over something that doesn't need to be done for 6 months. So time constraints and goals can be very important for our prioritization. Location actually is a type of prioritizing. And I use this example a lot, like with running errands. If we don't plan, we don't prioritize, we can end up running around town to all of these different places, which can really take longer. So if we plan ahead based on maybe working further away from your home, so doing all of the tasks like running to the grocery store, the post office, because they're the furthest away. And then as you make your way towards home, you can stop at Target and you can stop wherever, stop to get gas before you get home. Conversely, you can work the opposite way if that's what you would prefer, starting closer to home and working your way out. But I think sometimes it's more productive to start further away and work your way more towards home. And the last type of prioritizing is planning by need for future tasks. So this means that we plan and we prioritize based on one task needs to be completed before we can move on to something else. Within maybe a working environment or a school environment, if you're part of a group or work in that way, maybe your part of the puzzle needs to be done before the next person can pick up and do what they need to do. So sometimes we might have to prioritize based on the need of what's going to need to be done in the future. Our next B is to be focused. One of the things that I read in some of the articles that I found was a statistic, or I guess a fact, that it takes about 23 minutes to refocus after an interruption. I don't know the validity of that. However, I think that it's something, I included it in here because I think it's something to consider when thinking about our attention and our focus. So the idea is that my thought process when I read this was that, if we're getting distracted by our internal things going on, external things going on, noise, children yelling, a phone ringing, dings coming through on your computer from emails, messages, those types of things can really distract us. And it might not necessarily take us 23 minutes to totally refocus, but there is an amount of time that it takes to refocus once you're distracted. So we can help to be more focused by managing and identifying what those sources of distractions are. So I kind of mentioned some of the things already, but emails coming through, colleagues, messenger apps, texts, phone calls, family members, somebody knocking at the door. Really, these types of distractions are everywhere. And some things we might naturally block out. Other things really do affect how well we can focus. So managing our distractions and identifying them can help us with our time and our time management. It might be helpful to find the best working environment for you. I kind of reiterate this concept of metacognitive awareness a lot in some of the presentations that we do, because the general definition of that is thinking about how you think. So you might be somebody that needs to work in a completely quiet environment, whereas a colleague, a coworker, a family member, a friend prefers to be in a place where they can have just background music or noise, or in a coffee shop or a restaurant, the kind of that ambient noise going on. And this also might depend on what you're doing. I know for myself, sometimes it's really hard for me to sit in a noisy office and do my documentation. So I know that about myself, and I know I need to stay in my own office to kind of get things done at the end of the day. But at home, sometimes I'm more productive when I'm listening to music and cleaning. So, finding the best working environment for you is something that can be very helpful. I talked about this 5-minute rule as well before, and using a timer. So you can use this in a few different ways. It doesn't have to necessarily be 5 minutes, but the idea is just using a timer as some type of external reminder to keep you focused. So sometimes if it's really hard for someone to focus, I will start kind of with this 5 minutes. Let them gauge how well they do, and we can always increase that time. But you set basically you set a timer for 5 minutes. At the end of that 5 minutes, if you're done doing what you intended to do, move on to something else. If not, set it for another 5 minutes. So this can help you focus and stay on track. It's also just kind of a good external reminder of checking in with yourself and how well, not only are you managing time, but just, how long is it taking to do certain things, which that can then help you in the future with your time management. The next type is to be structured. So one of the three main things that I want to talk about today, and I'm going to go into some more examples, especially with this time blocking, but different techniques such as time blocking, written schedules, and electronic tools can really help us with our structure. Believe it or not, I think sometimes even in moments of chaos, sometimes people have an organized chaos, and we're very much creatures of habit, whether that's organized or unorganized. But having some type of structure can help with time management. So the first thing I mentioned, time blocking, is a technique that assists with limiting and stopping multitasking to focus on one task at a time. Multitasking is actually less productive. So if you're doing one thing, even if you have to go on, it takes time to go on to something else, it's taking you more time or less time ultimately because you're being more productive. Excuse me. And this time blocking allows us to budget set amounts of hours of the day to complete tasks. So that also can kind of be achieved with this next strategy, written schedules. But it helps to, again, back to that idea of visualize, see what you need to do, see what you have to achieve in that day, that week, that month, and then come up with a plan. There also are a lot of electronic tools, I'm sure you guys are aware, or might even have different ones. I know sometimes Google, there's a lot of different features on Google. I'm not too tech savvy in that aspect, but a lot of times patients will tell me that they prefer to sync iPhone calendars, sync their Googles with their family and their work schedules to help with being more structured. But some other apps that are out there are Timely, Plan, and Week Plan, if these are things that you might want to check out. So there are a lot of different resources that are available to help with this structure. So I want to focus more so on time blocking, and I have two different examples here. I made up examples of maybe some type of time blocking schedule you might have as related to work or something like that. And then one that maybe might be applied a little bit more to home. So whether that be a weekend, whether you're taking care of the kids during the day. two kind of variations because I know not everybody is in the same situation. So we'll start with work. For work, for example, you can see in each one of these, we have like a dark gray block, a light gray block, dark gray, light gray, which just kind of helps to separate the time. So what I did here was for somebody maybe who's starting work, maybe they block their time and they set their schedule so that from 8 to 9 o'clock, that's going to be devoted to emails, follow-up calls, reviewing messages that were maybe left since the night before. If things can be done before or between 8 to 9, great. If not, you might have to flex this schedule a little bit. This is just an example. And then if you're done early, then that leaves you a little bit more free time to do some other things that you need to do. You might have to block time then also. So from 9 to noon, working on new employee orientation modules or documents. So you've allotted 3 hours to help you focus and to get on track with achieving that goal. We then might have a lunch from 12 to 1, a staff meeting from 1 to 2:30, 2:30 to 3 o'clock. Our goal is to contact a certain client, to review meetings from the day before, plan for ongoing services. And then at the end of the day, you've kind of blocked time to prepare for a presentation for Friday's focus group discussion. So yes, this is a schedule essentially, but it actually blocking chunks of time can really be helpful. But we also do have to be a little bit, flexible depending on what things are coming up during the day. But if you have this availability, this can be helpful. So an example for home, maybe if we have children that are school-aged, we might technically almost every day, Monday through Friday, from 6:30 to 8:30 is the time that, we ourselves shower, get breakfast together, and get the kids ready for school. Around 8:30, we plan usually to leave to take the kids to school. Once we get home from 9 to 11, this is the time that we've allotted for ourselves, maybe for some of our short-term goals. So running our errands, going to Target, make sure we look at our list, drop off packages at the post office, pick up new glasses. And then once we get home from that, roughly 11 to 12:30, we've set aside time to make phone calls. So calling to make appointments, pay bills, call your mother, your sister, your brother to discuss upcoming weekend plans. Again, that can help you be more structured. From 1 to 2, we might plan to exercise. And at 3:30, the children have to be picked up, and at 5 o'clock, we start dinner. So I know looking at this, it doesn't seem like we have much free time in the day. But like I said, these are just made up examples that I came up with, and just to kind of give you an idea of how we can block time to improve our time management. So the last B is to be self-aware. So tracking our time can be helpful. So, using all these tools help us to focus. They help to be more structured. They help us to be intentional, but they also help us to track our time and be more aware. To be more aware by tracking our time. So we can look at this and see, where am I really excelling? What things do I maybe need to work on? Which again goes back to this metacognitive awareness. So we can predict how well we think our techniques, our schedules, our time blocking is going to be, and try to adhere to these time management strategies. When we're done, we evaluate our effectiveness of the strategy. So maybe if we decide to time block, at the end of week 1, we look back and say, at the beginning of week 1, we might say, I think this is going to be really helpful for me. I've really jam-packed my day, but I think this is something that's going to keep me on track. However, once we evaluate at the end of the week, that kind of gives us our room to see, okay, you know what, I was really way more successful in the morning. So when I plan for next week, I'm going to put my harder tasks in the morning. Or I was really tired by the end of the day. So I think I might have to plan in some more breaks, unlike Marissa's schedule that she made up as an example. But, you know, just kind of modifying, evaluating, predict, evaluate, and then modify. So once we evaluate, we can modify what we've already established to find things that are more successful. If you attended the presentation last month, I did post this book. I didn't take any information, not too much information from this book that for this month, this presentation, but it still does have some good resources for time management. I have no, you know, personal gains in this book or anything. I've just, from a therapeutic standpoint, found it very helpful. It has a lot of different tips, tools, tricks. And really, it's just dealing with cognitive function loss, not even necessarily brain injury, just any type of loss. So concussion, cancer, stroke, treatment, you know, we treat them generally the same when we notice that there's a loss. So this is a book that I have personally found very helpful. So just to kind of wrap up, we have some just additional strategies and tools. Some of this might be a little bit repetitive, but writing things down, simplify, and use one tool at a time. So keep consistent with a planner, a calendar, you know, whatever works for you and your family. Consider a family calendar and syncing each other's calendars. I know sometimes with my own patients, when they do sync calendars, it's very helpful for them to deal with scheduling for therapy and kind of planning what their own functional goals are going to be for the week based on what everybody else in the family has going on. But even, you know, writing it down does improve your chance to remember it, but we really have to get in a schedule too of reviewing the plan each week, daily, to kind of stay on top of things multiple times a day, to kind of keep with our schedule and our lists. Maybe consider highlighting important information on your calendar or your schedule, having that quick extra visual of when you're walking past the refrigerator and you see something that's highlighted or that's in bright red, if there's some type of importance there and it can catch your eye and reorient yourself to it daily. Live in the moment. And, you know, it talks so much about strategies and tools and how we can compensate, but sometimes the best thing that we can do is just live in the moment. So your plan for the week is ready, you're using your tools, live in the moment, and just take things day by day. Don't put too much pressure on yourself. Sometimes the more pressure we put, the more easily frustrated we can become. And that really takes us away from being successful and putting too many demands on ourselves. Regularly looking at our schedule, I think I said, but, you know, establishing a routine for looking at our schedules, our time blocks, every evening after dinner, look at the next day, look the first thing in the morning after breakfast, periodically check throughout the day. And if that's something that's difficult, you know, if you're somebody that tends to get wrapped up in whatever you're working on, set reminders, have that little timer go off, and have that as your reminder to even look at your list. So that's another way you could use a timer too, is periodic timers or reminders just to check back in with that list and make sure there's nothing that you've missed just by kind of going on with the day. Watches and cell phones can be very good tools in addition to the apps that we talked about, but you can set, like I said, hourly chimes, notes to check your schedule, review upcoming tasks. This helps us monitor the passage of time as well. I'm not as familiar, but I know there are some watches that have multiple alarms, so you can set them to go off for multiple things at different intervals. And something just as simple as a kitchen timer can be helpful. Try what works for you. There's things that are magnetic, so that's easy to move, or things that are magnetic, so you can have it, find a better place for it. Maybe you need something that's more easy to move to other areas or other rooms. Or I've had patients that actually we've had them get lanyards that have a phone pouch, I guess, for it, so that they keep it on their person. They keep it on them throughout the day, so that when they need first of all, their phone's always there. And second of all, if we're using timers, because it's always there, we're not going to miss those alarms. And you sometimes might not even need anything that's a loud noise. Sometimes just vibrating, that's enough of a reminder. Maybe if it's on your watch or on a phone on a hard surface, you might hear it vibrating. But sometimes people prefer a type of loud alarm as well. So my final thought for today, again from that book that I mentioned, is start low and go slow. So going back to that principle of we don't have to fix everything at once. We're trying to identify where we have problems, make small goals, and then as we achieve things, we can gradually add more. But starting out too much too fast can really be kind of counterproductive. So when you try to implement things, start low and go slow. And we will, once we stop recording, go into questions and comments. But this is also my contact information. So if anybody has any questions, they can give me a call or reach out through email, which I should put that on there. The phone number to Lemieux Sports is 724-720-3050. Okay, and there are any references. There we go.